Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the report with me, Yasmin Khatun. On tonight's programme, we'll be looking at Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's surprise visit to Moscow. We'll also be looking at protests by junior NHS doctors over government changes to the terms of their contracts. But first, the highest court in the UK has been hearing a legal challenge brought by the prisoner advisory group CAGE against the Charity Commission. The group accused the Commission of exceeding its powers when two charities were told not to give any more funding to CAGE. Khalil Charles has this report.
The landmark judicial review examined whether or not the Commission was right to instruct two charities, the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust and the Roderick Foundation, not to make any future donations to the CAGE advocacy group. Earlier this year, the organisation hit the headlines when it was claimed that the Islamic State group killer, Jihadi John, was one of the group's former clients, Mohammed Emwazi. In an overcrowded courtroom, Lord Chief Justice John Thomas personally presided over the proceedings and appeared keen to reach a final verdict. The case seemed to rest on whether the Commission was within its rights to seek assurances that no further funding would be provided. Outside the Royal Courts, Ibrahim Mahmood, CAGE's media director, was keen to stress the significance of the case.
And it's a really crucial question of constitutional importance. What you have here is a charity commission that is essentially attempting to nationalise the charity sector and telling charities that they can't work on causes that they feel are questionable or controversial or even unpopular. And our answer is no. Charities are here to do a very important role for civil society. They're there to hold government to account and to hold power to account. So that's what CAGE has been doing for the last 15 years, and that's essentially why CAGE exists. We're there to hold power to account, and we feel that this is one of the better ways to hold power to account by essentially arguing this point.
In the original challenge, the group argued that the Commission's actions violated its rights to freedom of association. However, those grounds were dismissed. Instead, leave was given to challenge the Commission on the grounds that it had overstepped its powers when it asked the two charities to give a commitment that they would never provide funds to CAGE regardless of any future changing circumstances. In a statement released by the Charity Commission before the verdict, it said that the Charity Commission is confident that the court will find it acted within its powers. The court has already dismissed two claims by CAGE that the Commission breached its human rights and did not act fairly. The Commission believes it used its powers appropriately and that the court and the public will agree. Today, the decision of the court was at odds with the Charity Commission, and given that no new funding has been supplied to the group, CAGE believed that the action of the Charity Commission was unfair and the decision of the judge today was an important one. The victory by CAGE today over the Charity Commission will have repercussions up and down the country. It proves that the Commission has no right to interfere in how charities allocate their funds. Khalil Charles, The Report.
Now joining me to discuss is Ibrahim Mahmood of CAGE and political commentator Imran Shah. Welcome to the programme, both of you. Ibrahim, can I come to you first? Ibrahim, what are your reactions? I know you've just come out of court.
Well, this is a very significant outcome that we've seen today from the court. I mean, the court has actually, essentially, the Charity Commission has been forced to make a significant climb down from their previous position, and it seems that the court has agreed that the trustees, are free to use their powers and duties in line with the best interest of the charity. And I think that's the argument that CAGE has been arguing for a very long time. And we want to see a charity sector that is independent of state interference and that the regulator is only there to deal with genuine cases of abuse and misuse of charitable funds. What you have here is a crusade by the Charities Commission to essentially dictate to charities what they can and can't do. And it's full of nationalisation, and that's something that we're absolutely not happy with. And we've actually led the way, taken some really strong leadership, and done something on behalf of the charity sector that no charity intended to do for a very long time.
Ibrahim, this seems like a landmark victory, you might say.
It's significant. It's the first time that anyone has brought a claim against the Charities Commission as well. And what you're seeing here is that CAGE, thankfully has really given some respite and ease to the Muslim charity sector, but also we've done a wider service for all charities in essentially giving some clarification in this point of law, where we are saying that trustees, who are really key volunteers, giving time, a few hours a week, essentially run the backbone of this country, which is our civil society. And we don't want government to dictate what charities can and can't do. And the point here is that charities, for centuries, have been campaigning for unpopular causes. If you look at the Victorian period, charities had a campaign for the idea of free education, and that's one that's been won and fought for, led by charities. The idea of race relations in this country, the idea of equality and of progressive those kind of values. These are things that charities have been leading way for centuries, and we don't want to see a sector that's essentially being dictated to due to the whims and the qualms of the government-imposed charity commission.
Imran, now we've been following this story right from the get-go, and a number of our viewers and commentators like yourself have come on to discuss this. Now, charities, Muslim-led charities, have often said they've been bearing the brunt of attack from the Charity Commission. Do you think this might change things?
It may sort of scale down things. I don't think it will stop the pursuit of William Shawcross and his new agenda when it comes to the Charity Commission. Definitely it will put us sort of a...
Sorry, Imran, what do you mean by William Shawcross's agenda?
So for those who it's quite common now in knowledge that William Shawcross was an ex-chairman of the neoconservative Henry Jackson Society, and he was placed in by the Prime Minister, and even his contract was renewed very early despite protests inside Parliament of doing so. So, we have someone that's been ushered straight from the heart of a new conservative agenda, straight into the Charity Commission, and then we see that it is no surprise that a number of Muslim charities have been sanctioned or been punished but without any actual evidence base or whatsoever. And what really this is a broader sort of indication of is that the way in which whether it's charity trustees or school governors or people that want to engage in public life in Britain, if you're Muslim, then you are essentially stigmatized and by more sort of media rhetoric than it is by evidence. And I don't think this will stop that push in the same way that it hasn't stopped Theresa May and Cameron pushing for the counter-extremism agenda through legislation. But it's definitely a landmark precedent which people like Cage, like other charities, can use to fight that battle, that political battle.
Imran, we did speak to the Charity Commission earlier in the day, and they did say that, following the revelation of Jihadi John as Mohammed Mwazi and sort of the actions taken by Cage at that time, they felt it was a real need to behave in the way they did to stop those two charities from giving money to Cage. What do you make of the comments they made before this verdict came out?
Well, when you look at the evidence base, it's quite clear objectively that they weren't condoning, and this is something that was clearly stated by Asim, that they weren't condoning what Mohammed Mwazi was doing. They were trying to give an explanation as to what led him to that path. That's not a basis of extremism. That's a basis of trying to understand a political situation. So really, what basis do they have apart from media spin that is done by the Daily Mail, by the likes of the Telegraph? And if we have a supposed independent regulation machine that's acting in an ideologically driven manner, then maybe this court case is something that was much needed earlier on, and it's very good news. It's hats off to Cage from actually pulling it off.
Ibrahim, now that was exactly what you were saying at Cage, saying there was a politicisation of the Charity Commission.
Absolutely. We've heard from court today the shocking revelations that were presented in front of the court with regards to the significant political interference on the Charity Commission. What you have here is a man who's responsible for regulating the most goodwill part of society, our charity, who's come in with a very strong hand and dictating a very narrow and bigoted view of the way the world should look in his own image. And that's not on. And for the idea that William Shawcross can dictate the national interest is horrific by any standard. And I think what we have heard today is really quite distressing. The idea that the Charity Commission has essentially become this juggernaut that is seeking to impose its will, force its will upon society. And Cage has halted that. Cage has stopped that. And I think that's something that's really important to make a note of.
Ibrahim, but we also know that the government is allowing for the Charity Commission to have more powers in this regard.
Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
But we also know that the government is allowing for the Charity Commission to extend its powers in this regard.
So, the government made clear that they intend to do a large number of things. And again, the idea is that the charity sector is one of the last parts of society that's free from government interference. So the idea that government has noticed that the law is definitely unbalanced, where even legislation is very unbalanced. And now they've had their eyes on the charity sector for a long time. So they've seen that the charity sector is one of the last places of society that are speaking truth to power and opposing and dissenting against government, diatribes on extremism is something that they've noticed and have tried to act in that way. But what we have shown clearly, in the words of the Lord Chief Justice, who is the head of the judiciary of England as well, that Charity Commission did not have the right to do what it did in March, and that it was outside of its powers. And in fact, the Charity Commission itself, its own lawyer, said that this afternoon.
Ibrahim, now a lot of what's surrounding this case is to do with the revelation of Mohammed Emwazi and the reactions from Cage. I know you had an in-house report recently published admitting some failures.
Well, the report we published was an external report. It's only commissioned a long time ago, and I think it's actually quite really widely welcomed by a number of people as well, and even the reporting of the report itself was actually really widely accepted and widely welcomed. I think what you have here is, if you actually look, the only Muslim organisation in the history of this country, to my knowledge, has actually conducted a very serious, thorough review of its processes and of the way it handles its work, and has put that to the public and has put that in front of the core public opinion. I think that shows true leadership and true integrity, and also holding ourselves to account on our own principles of due process, of accountability, and of holding people to account.
Okay, Ibrahim, before we have to move on, now this news has to be welcomed, the news from the courts today. What we're going to see now.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for in this part of the programme, but do join us for the second part of the show, where we'll be looking at President Assad's visit to Moscow and what it means for the conflict in the country. Don't go away.